All right, Zach, Oregon and Indiana. Indiana favored in this one on FanDuel by 3.5. Over under set at 47.5 last time I checked. I'll double check that really fast while we're talking about it. But a lot to discuss with this game. News coming out this week of Jordon Davison, the first rematch. Well, not first rematch of the season, but the first rematch of the season for Indiana. Really, the first rematch of Kirk Cinnetti's career at Indiana against another team. So it's going to be very interesting how this one plays out. Oregon has both coordinators going off to be head coaches elsewhere. You have Oregon players entering into the portal. Obviously, Indiana, they did do a good job of dominating that Alabama offensive line, but Stephen Daly played uh, you know, Kellen Wyatt and Stephen Daly, them both being out in this one, is that going to impact things? Because we didn't see that in the last game when we saw these two teams play, both of those guys being out. So it's going to be really interesting to see how this goes. What are your general thoughts on this game? Do you want to start like Oregon offense versus Indiana defense first and then kind of switch sides?
Sure. Yeah, we can do that.
Okay,
We can
what are
do
your
that.
thoughts on the Oregon offense against the Indiana defense?
So I'm really concerned for Oregon's offense because, and I go back to the Texas Tech game. That 23 is a big fat mirage because they didn't do anything. They turned Texas Tech over a ton. And often they were just getting field goals or empty possessions off that game. And granted, Texas Tech's defense was really good in that game. But equally important to note, Texas Tech's offense was awful in that game. And it gave Oregon's offense so many short fields that they couldn't do anything with. Now you're talking about Jordon Davison being out. Lamar and Hughes, I mean, Hughes didn't play it all this year, but Lamar, they're both in the transfer portal. So where's your running back depth? Right? I'm trying to think of all the running backs that they're going to have play in this game. If Davison's out, like who are the running backs in this game?
Noah Whittington and
Whittington and
Deere Hill Jr.
Deer Hill.
Jay Harris might play, but he is technically in the transfer portal now. That actually did happen today. And Dan Lanning typically has a rule that you cannot play if you're in the transfer portal. So we'll see if he makes an exception for this one. They have a fourth string guy that could play as well, but he hasn't played all season long.
Yeah. So Whittington, like Whittington and Hill, that's a good duo. You might
Yeah,
have,
I like both of those guys a lot. I think
yeah.
they've done a good job this season.
Davison has kind of been their big back though, and he's really kind of blew up, and now
Yeah,
he's out.
short yardage. He's also been a really good lead blocker at times. When they put those two
Yeah.
running backs out there, he's done a really good job being a lead blocker for like Whittington um, and Deere Hill Jr. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah. Well, so I just have concern there. And granted, I don't think Indiana's defensive line is as talented as Texas Tech's, but I also think that Indiana's defense is the best coached unit in college football. And so even with Wyatt out, even with Bailey out, I I have a tough time seeing Oregon being able to get enough yardage in the run game to allow Dante Moore enough time to work through his progressions. And we saw that in the first game, right? Like we saw the one big play that Moore had. It was like I think a 75-yard touchdown throw. But other than that, he was largely ineffective. He was under pressure all game. They did run the ball somewhat decently in that game, but I just wonder, especially now that it's not an Autzen, like how much more of an advantage is that for Indiana's defense? So I wonder just how many times Oregon's going to be able to score in this football game.
Yeah, I think it all comes down to the running game first and foremost. You have to get this running game going for Oregon. Listen, Dante Moore's a good quarterback, but I don't think Dante Moore is the type of quarterback that you want to, put everything on, especially going up against this Indiana secondary. If this Indiana secondary was a little bit, beat up, or maybe they weren't showing as much this season, then you might be able to trust Dante Moore to kind of throw it all around. But we saw how that worked out for Alabama. You cannot become a one-dimensional team in this one. And then also, I was just on Sports Chat 503 with Ryan talking about this. You have got to see good games from Kenyon Sadiq and Jamari Sharp
Yep.
in this one. Sadiq, last time these two teams played, 2 receptions for 21 yards. Jamari Johnson had 1 reception for 3 yards. Both of these two guys have struggled against zone coverage this season. Two of their worst games on the season was against Indiana and was against Wisconsin. Now, Wisconsin had some extenuating circumstances, the wind and all that stuff. So you can definitely talk about, well, maybe it wasn't the best one to, kind of reference for that. But still, or, Wisconsin plays a whole lot of zone. Indiana plays a whole lot of zone. I think really the only team that probably plays more zone than them in the country, at least in the Power Four, is Pitt. I think Pitt probably plays the most zone in the country out of anybody. That's just my guess. I don't have hard and fast numbers on that, but just from watching them play, they're always in zone. They hardly ever play man. But overall, is Kenyon Sadiq and Jamari Sharp, are they going to be able to go out there and find the soft spots in the zone, get the ball, turn up field? Because we saw Terrence Ferguson get a whole lot of yards after the catch last season. He was excellent in that. Kenyon Sadiq has been an excellent receiver. He's been a mismatch for players, but to go up against the zone, you really don't have the mismatch situation there. So, are you going to get some more work from your tight ends? Are you going to get a good running game in this one? You had a good running game last game, but that was also with Jordon Davison, doing the brunt of the work. You don't have Jordon Davison now.
Right.
What's that going to look like? I think you have to solve those two issues if Oregon's going to score over 20 points in this game.
Yeah. To that point. So if you take Dante Moore out of the equation, they had 21 carries for 108 yards, which is not bad. Like that's over 5 yards a carry.
Are you including sacks in that?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
Well, I'm just eliminating all of Dante Moore's
Oh, gotcha.
rushes.
Okay.
Um, so but to your point, Jordon Davison had 8 carries for 59 yards. He's out in this game. So again, that's 13 carries. Let me do math in my head. 13 carries for 48 yards for the rest of the backs. De'Aaron Hill was 3 carries for -3 yards. Noah Whittington, 5 carries for 27 yards. So there's a big question mark here for the run game.
Let's switch over to the other side of the ball. Oregon's offense again, or sorry, Indiana's offense against Oregon's defense. Oregon's defense, very good defensive line this season. Got Tatum and Uiagalelei there on the edge. Great pass rushers. Bear Alexander, Washington there holding up the middle as well. Those guys have been fantastic. But really, it was the Indiana defensive line that outperformed them last game. Can the Oregon defensive line, play much better in this one and give good opportunities for guys like Brandon Finney to get a couple more takeaways in this one? He had the takeaway last game that was huge for them, and honestly, you think Oregon probably could have won that game off of that, but it took a really clutch performance by Fernando Mendoza to come back from that interception and play very well to lead Indiana to the win. I think some people think this game was not close last time. Like, oh, it was a blowout. Indiana won by 10. And, like, yeah, Indiana did win by 10, but this was a very close game last time. And part of the reason was because of Oregon's defense being able to hold Indiana's offense at times. It's just at the end of the game, Indiana's offense was able to take over, and Oregon's offense wasn't able to stick with them. Obviously, that's not just Oregon's offense, that's Indiana's defense playing well. But what are your thoughts on Indiana's offense against Oregon's defense?
I think a big key, and I don't know if this has come out yet or not about the health and status of Khalil Benson, but I think that might be a huge key in this game is his health going up against Uiagalelei. Because I think if it's Mikulski or a Johnny rather than Benson, I think that could be a mismatch that changes the tone of this game. If Benson's healthy and he plays, I think I think they can at least get a draw on this defensive line, as good as they are. Like, they are very good. So do I think that Indiana is going to take over and be like dominant from the start? No. That's not how, to your point, that's not how it was last time. Here is maybe the change though in this game versus last time. Indiana probably had to work off a silent count for a good chunk of that game because it was an Autzen. They're not going to be working on a silent count not in the Peach Bowl. Like they are going to be able.
They could. Ohio State worked on a silent count against Miami, but I think that was probably a bad decision by them. So I tend to agree with you. But I mean, it could
Yeah,
happen. But yeah, I agree. It probably won't.
well,
I doubt it would. Yeah.
think Ohio State was probably not the wisest to do that.
Okay, let's move on.
Yeah.
This could change quick if we start getting into that. Okay, go ahead.
Yeah. We are getting reports that Benson has been fully practicing all reps. So
yeah, he played against Ohio State and he played
yeah,
against Alabama as well, so he should be fine.
yeah. I'm assuming that he's fine, but he did not start against Ohio State, and he was quickly inserted back in after Curry got 2 sacks. So that I think that's the main thing. But yeah, I don't think this is the type of game where like Indiana's just gonna go crazy in the beginning. But guys in the chat made this point. Charlie Becker, 0 catches the first time around. I don't think that's gonna happen again. And by the way, Elijah Surratt, they didn't have an answer for him last time. 8 carries, 121 yards.
8 receptions, you mean?
Yeah, 8 catches. Did I say 8 carries?
You said 8 carries, yeah. Okay.
8 catches, receptions for 121 yards. I wonder how well the defensive back end for Oregon will be able to deal with the emergence of Becker as well as all those back shoulder fades.
Yeah, I'm very interested to see what the Oregon secondary does because they, like I said, they did have some success against Indiana, but they've just been so lights out here recently. They did a very good job in the first half against James Madison. Obviously, things went a little different in the second half, but again, I don't think that's who this Oregon team is. It's not good that you saw that, but again, but they were excellent against Texas Tech. But I hesitate to take all that much from that Texas Tech game because I just think Baron Morton is such a non-compete quarterback. I'm not trying to be a jerk here, but in terms of like Fernando Mendoza and stuff, he's just you can't compare him at all. And what Fernando Mendoza is able to do with his legs and keep plays alive and everything else, like it makes Indiana's passing offense almost unstoppable, especially when they have the run game going as well. So if you're Oregon, the very first thing you have to do in this game, you trust your pass defense, but you have got to stop the run. You have got to make Indiana one-dimensional, and you got to let those edge rushers and Tatum and Uyunglele pin their ears back and just go after Fernando Mendoza and let your linebackers kind of eat up the middle and make sure, well, the defensive line eat up the middle and make sure that the running backs don't get loose and break out. If Indiana runs for, I say, over 125 yards in this game, I think Indiana's got this one in the bag. If they run for less than 100 yards, I think this is a very interesting game, and I think this is one that Oregon can win if they make that happen.
Yeah. I mean, just going back to last time, not including the kneel downs, 33 carries for 128 yards. So they lost 17 yards on 4 kneel downs. But it was, I mean, Roman Hemby averaged 3.7 yards per carry. Good enough. Mendoza ran 6 times for 31 yards, 5.2 yards per carry. Kalon Black, who I think is going to get more carries in this game, but he had 7 carries for 31 yards, 4.4 yards per carry. So, I mean, they were averaging 4 yards a carry or better, not including the kneel downs.
Mm-hmm. All right, let's get to predictions. Fisherman gave his. Everybody else, you give yours in the chat as well. You can do scores, or you can just tell us who you think is winning the game. Would love to hear you guys' thoughts. Fisherman says everyone's given Oregon no chance in this rematch, but he's got Oregon. I agree. You cannot say Oregon doesn't have a chance. I think that is being too dismissive of this Ducks team that has been excellent this season. I think they've been a top 5 team in the country this season. I think they're probably the second best team in the country between these two. So I really like Oregon. I think that they're an excellent team. I feel like Oregon has more things that they have to do to win this game. Like they have to stop the run. They have to pin Fernando Mendoza in. They have to get multiple sacks. They probably need to win the turnover battle in this one. I mean, I feel like there's more things that Oregon has to do to get the win. That doesn't mean they can't win by any means. Or Oregon Oregon could definitely win this game. But when I look at this game, I feel like Oregon has to do more to win, not do more, has to execute certain things more. Whereas Indiana, I feel like if something doesn't go right, they can pivot to something else. If something doesn't go right here, they can pivot to something else. And so I'm going to pick the team that I feel like has been better the entire season. Not much better. I mean, obviously Oregon's been very good this season too. Only one loss. The team that I think has been better all season long. I'll go with Indiana to win this one. I'm gonna go 31-24. So Indiana to cover, but only a touchdown win. But I think it'll be closer than a touchdown. I think it's come down to one of the final plays of the game.
Okay. So I agree with you. Oregon can win this game, which is going to sound weird when you hear my score prediction here. Oregon can absolutely win this game. My issue is that, and everybody said it's hard to beat the same team twice. I agree. If we're talking about emotions, if we're talking about overconfidence, if we're talking about, all the cliches in sports, who takes who does the best job of taking emotion out of this game and puts it on the process? It's Curt Cignetti. They are workmanlike. We've got NSPR in the chat. He's on their Indiana sports psychology team. He knows what's going on in practice right now. Businesslike, workmanlike. I don't think Indiana is going to have I don't think they're going to look past. I don't think they're going to be like, oh, we beat Oregon already. And the thing that I can't get out of my head is, yes, I agree that it was not a blowout in Autzen, but they went to freaking Autzen and they beat them, and they beat them by 2 scores. And how did they do it? They controlled the game for the last 20 minutes. Pick 6 aside. They controlled that game the second half on. I don't see it changing, except I don't think there's a pick 6. I've got Indiana 31-13 because I don't think Oregon's going to be able to I think Indiana is going to hit a ceiling with their ability to score.
Could definitely see that happening if Oregon doesn't get the run game going with less backs in this one. So Alta's got Oregon 27-24. Appreciate that. John Jacobs, appreciate you being here. John says 24-20 Indiana. Fisherman 2017 Oregon. Philip 35 Indiana to 21 Oregon. What else we got in here? NSPR says 31-17 Indiana. Making sure I don't miss any in here. I think those are all the score predictions we got. So most everybody picking Indiana, but you've got a couple of Oregon picks in there as well.
Yeah. I'll just put this out. I think it's 17-13 Indiana, like midway third quarter. Okay. Like I think it's close. And then I just think Indiana is they're too workmanlike. And I just think they're gonna get a couple touchdowns to put it out of reach.
PK chiming in with his 31-10 Indiana score prediction as well. Last thing I'll ask you on this, and then we'll move on because we are running out of time, but I did want to get this question in here. This game, Zach, for Indiana, is this the greatest coaching test that Indiana will have, this Indiana coaching staff will have since Curt Cignetti has been at Indiana? Because you think about it, they've played before, they're deep into the playoffs. They've seen their film all season long. Oregon faced them firsthand. I don't think they're going to be able. I think this staff for Oregon is too good for Indiana to just come out and do exactly what they did before. I think that they've done a really good job of disguising things and making teams kind of second guess things. If Dante Morris figured this out a little bit more, we could see Indiana need to make some adjustments in this game. Do you think that this is the greatest coaching test for this Indiana coaching staff since they've been there?
That's a good question. Probably. Because it's not like they're coaching at home either. Like it is a neutral site. Now they don't have to deal with the time change like Oregon, which I do think that's another knock against Oregon. But I agree with you that part of Bryant Haynes' brilliance is his ability to disguise coverage. Mm-hmm. If Dante Moore can figure that out a little bit in the first half, it might be very much a nail biter at the end where even Indiana has to catch up. And that's where I wonder that's a pathway for Oregon to win this game.
Mm-hmm. All right, well there you go. You got our predictions here. We had a comment from Trojan Fight earlier. Trojan Fight, I cannot find your comment. I apologize, but I forgot to take out the USC DC rumors in the title, so we were planning to talk about that, but we're actually going to talk about an Ohio State player that could go to the portal. The DC rumors for USC, I think we can get to either tomorrow or to the next one, and maybe I'll bring on Zach for a single video or something like that if we need to. But we will go live after the Indiana Oregon game, or at least I will, if Zach can. But I'm sure Zach will try to do that if he can.